Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Today I want to talk about bamboo dowels, which are really bamboo skewers. You can buy them at any grocery store or big discount stores, at least here in America. I'm not sure about elsewhere, but I'm sure you can. They're just made of bamboo and they're very small diameter. And they can vary. This is one of the things that I talk about is they can vary in size. So I want to talk about these dowels. Before I do, I have two quick things I want to mention. First and foremost, my OTB ruler. If you remember, this is my OTB ruler. This is a 12-incher. It was a center ruler. I had 0 out in the center, and it went 12 inches in both directions. Was like 24 inches long. So anyway, I took this and I cut it in half right on the 0. And then I took it, and like right now, this one is from left to right. And then if I flip it, I glued it back with the two halves together, opposite sides, and this one goes from right to left. And so that makes it for a really handy little ruler. And this is very handy. What's unique about the OTB ruler is this is a 1/16 of an inch increment ruler. And the problem I find, as you know, on the OTB ruler, these are 1/8 inch increments apart, so it makes it easier to read. But I still want the 1/16 inch accuracy, so I put the 1/16 inch increment on the opposite side of the ruler. So the gap in here is still 1/8 of an inch, but if I need the 1/16 inch beyond want the 16th inch increment, I can refer to this side to get it. I did a whole thing on these rulers if you want to go look at that. But I just wanted to show you what I did here. And I really like this. I like it enough that I think I'm going to, if I can find somebody, I don't know if my brother can do it yet or not. I haven't talked to him about it. But he made these for me. And he just made out of generic rulers. As you can see, he just used his laser to do it. So anyway, I'm going to see if I can get him to do this. Same thing, but with the principle of these would be a 1/16 of an inch increment, and then across here would be a 32nd of an inch increment. So you can actually drill down to a 32nd of an inch on it. And so if I get that ruler done, I'll let you know, but it'd be cool to have something like this with 1/16 inch increments so you can still see it pretty well, but the 32nd of an inch is possible because it'll be on the opposite side. And I think it's a great idea for making a ruler so that you can measure out to a 32nd of an inch without any problem with one of these. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to try to get that done in the 1/32nd of an inch increment. So much about that. The other thing I want to mention is on eBay, I just noticed it yesterday, and I did put a bid on it. There is a bid out there. If you go to eBay and do a Jig search on those two words, it'll pop up on the list pretty high up. And it's only a day and a half left on this thing. And probably a little less than that now by the time you see this. Today is Sunday, the 27th of October, 2019. So tomorrow, it'll be over. And so if you're interested in those, that is one of the few big good deals out there. In fact, it was so good, I had to put a bid on it. And I'll tell you right now, I did bid $16 on them. It's two of them. They're just plain Jane Jig. If you know what the Jig is, this is the Jig. And I've done a bunch of different videos on this thing. Has the built-in scale on the older style and everything. Anyway, I did a bid on them. And I can get two of them. There's like $12 shipping. And right now I put a bid out there. There was nobody bid on it yet. There was a $10 starting bid. So I did a bid of, don't tell anybody, but I did a bid of $16. And the reason I did that was I can't let them go too cheap. So if you want those, you have two choices. If you want to watch it very carefully and nobody else outbids me on this, I'll get them for about $16 a piece plus the shipping. And you can take and contact me through my email, and I can make arrangements to sell it to you at whatever price I pay for these. But I suspect it'll be less than $20 a piece for two of them. So less than $20 for one of these things is awesome. They're brand new. They're around $70 or so. And I have to tell you, the new ones, I did happen to buy a new one. I actually own 4 of these darn things now. Anyway, this is the newest one that I bought, and I paid like $50 for it or $40. And the only reason I bought this one was because it's the newest style, and I was curious about how these differ from the older ones. And maybe one of these days I'll do a review of just this one and compare the 2 pieces. They're pretty close to being the same thing. This one will do everything that that one does. But this one, if I had choice, I actually prefer the old one to the new one myself. And like I said, I'll get into a review of that someday. But if you're interested in Anchor Jig, they're out there, but most of them are over $60. And like I say, you can buy it brand new for $70. So be careful. I've seen a couple of them, they want like $100 for them. So be wary. But this particular deal is a very good deal. And if you want those, you're going to have to outbid my $16 bid. Don't tell anybody that's what I bid. Shh, that's between you and me. But if somebody else ends up with it, that's fine too. So I just didn't want to let them go that cheap without me looking at them. And that's why I say I'll have $14 a piece wrapped up in these things when I get them. That ain't a bad price for an Anchor Jig, as handy as they are. But I just don't need 2 more. So anyway, so much for that. If you want to know about those more, comment to me, email me, let me know. If you're interested in buying them, if I end up with them and you're interested in buying one from me, I can sell it to you, whatever the cost to ship them and what I paid for them. I'll split the price in half and you'll know what I paid. So anyway, enough about the jig. What we're really here for now is about bamboo skewers. Now, I've bought 3 different bundles of bamboo skewers, and one thing I have learned is they actually are not. Within the package, they're all pretty much the same size. But not all bamboo skewers are bamboo dowels, I'm going to call them, because we're using these as dowels. And bamboo dowels are not all created equal. This one is a lot thicker than this one, which is thicker than this one. And I'm sorry, that one is this one. This is the full length of it. These are 3/16 of an inch in diameter. And this one is actually a full 1/8 of an inch. So you just got to make sure that when you drill, do a micrometer reading on these so you know what they are, and then use the right bit accordingly. And we'll go over that bit size here in a second based on what there is. So let's get into what we're talking about doing these and how they can help you. Some of the tips and tricks about doing bamboo dowels. One of the things I noticed that when I was doing bamboo dowels is getting the angle consistent. Oh, we're going to talk about 3 different joints, by the way. We're going to talk about doing it with finger joints, doing a bamboo dowel. We're going to talk about doing it on a miter joint. Now, this one happens to be a gust joint. Okay, it's a spline joint. If you know what I'm talking about, gust joint, that means you've been following me. But without, just ignore the spline. If it was a 45 degree, you want to go at a 45 degree angle on your dowel so that it goes in here like so at a 45 degree. And you want it to be as close to the inside corner of your joint as you can get it. So I would put this like right there, so it's just at a 45, but it's just out of sight, and go all the way through. And you can come out here and go here. Now you can make what I call a dead hole instead, so it's only seen from one side, and we'll go over that here in a second. But that's the second joint that we're going to do, is the miter joint, and see how that one does. This is basically, a finger joint is basically a butt joint. So but the angle on this one, if you were going to put and strengthen this joint with bamboo dowels, then you're going to, I would go straight in. So I would have this here, and I would go straight in on both sides, over here and over here, to strengthen this finger joint. And that would add a huge amount of strength. If you're really going to put this under a lot of stress, it's probably worthwhile to do that. But it's not as critical as doing it with butt joints or miter joints. Those are actually a lot weaker, and they really need the additional help to at least be strong enough to do the job that you want it to do, as a general rule. So, and as I said, the miter joint, pretty cut and dry. 45 degree angle, no big deal. I would just take a 45 degree, cut a piece of wood at 45 so I can use it as a template, draw my line, and then I would draw wherever I'm going to start my dowel in. I would draw a line across it, the face, and then all my holes are going to be here. Now, the problem that you run across, if you look at that, you can see where I drilled 3 little holes here. And the reason I did that is it's just to show you that when you go through here, if you're hand drilling these if you're doing it by eye, the problem you're going to run across is that over here, if I start them all over here and they'll come out and I start them in even, when I get to the other side, that's what you're going to end up with if you're not careful. They won't line up to each other like they will on the first side. So in order to do that, you need some kind of guide, like a 45-degree guide that you can put on here so that when you use your drill and you start drilling down, you have a guide to go with, to go into it. So a guide is one of the things we're going to talk about real quick here before we're done. But a miter joint, easy peasy, don't worry about it. You can do it at 45 and come out pretty even, and you should be able to come out and hit the line on both sides so that they line up if that's what you want to do. You can also go in at a slightly less than 45 and then take and do a dead hole. And that's a little trickier. It's not hard, but that means that you're going to line up here, but it's not going to come out on the other side. So the hardest one to do that with is the regular butt joint. And before we go any further, first let me explain to you. Butt joint. There's 2 boards to a butt joint. When you set it down, I'm going to call this one as the bottom board and this one as the side board. So when you look at it here, you can see this bottom board's here. The side board does not touch the tabletop. So this is the angle that you're going to want to go in here. And you're going to actually want this angle to be somewhere around 22.5 degrees, maybe up to 30 degrees. The thicker these boards are, the steeper you can make the angle. So in this case, I found that a 22.5 degree works most of the time with virtually any dimensioned wood. This is 7/16, and if I'm going to use from 7/16 to 3/4 inch thick wood and put these small bamboo skewers or bamboo dowels in it, I probably would just use the 22.5 degree angle would be best. And what I did is I marked a little line here, which happens to be pretty close to where this is going to be at on my length of my drill bit I'm using. And I'm just using a standard drill bit. This is a Harbor Freight. And you want this to be the same diameter as your dowel that you're using. This is a 3/16 dowel. That's a 3/16 drill bit and dowel. So if you want to use a thicker one, like this one, if it's an 1/8 inch dowel, then you're going to want to use an 1/8 inch drill bit instead. You want this to be able to slide into the hole. This is one thing that's very important, is when you drill your hole, you want to be able to take that dowel and put it in the hole by hand like that. Whether it's a dead hole that you're putting it in, or it's a hole that goes all the way through, like this one. If it's just a dead hole, it gets a little trickier to get it to go in. You got to make sure of a couple of things, and we'll go over that in a second. Because dowels, the reason you want that hole to be the same size is that you got to get that all the way in there, and you only get one shot at sliding it into the hole. And if it's a dead hole, that's a little bit more challenging than it is when it's a through hole. On a through hole, I just squirt glue here. When it comes out here, then I just take my dowel and I shove it in and let it dry. And then when it comes out the other end, I just leave it alone until it dries, cut it off, and sand it down. If it's a dead hole, I squirt a little bit of glue on the hole. I spread some glue around the dowel for the length that it's going to go in, make them extra long, and then mark where the dead end hole will be. So if I went in like this on this dowel and it didn't come out on the second board, on the side board, then I want to know how long this dowel is when it's bottomed out. So that when the glue that's in the hole, the glue around this, when you shove it in, there'll be glue at the bottom of the hole. And there'll be glue all the way through. And that makes that dowel set up and be very strong in there once it dries. So lubing it up with the glue is kind of important. But on a blind hole, make sure you also know what your depth is on your dowel so that when you go to put it in, you know for sure when you're bottomed out. Because sometimes it's hard to tell. And once you start putting that in, you've got to be committed. Have a little tiny hammer ready so that you can finish tapping it in if you need to. And you don't want to have to tap too much, because that bamboo is like string all stuck together, and you start beating on the end of it, it'll spread open and come apart. That whole bamboo will come apart, and then it's not going to give you any strength inside there at all. You can do it. I've done it many times now. And I say my biggest thing, and I want to show you here, is getting the angle right. Because more importantly than anything, you are going to want to have the hole and mark a line across it so you have a place that you start. And then I use a guide to make sure that I maintain the angle on each of these holes the same. This is one of the ones I made. I put some magnets on it. And the reason the magnets are there is so that I could set this here, and I could actually use my little steel ruler, and I put it on there, and this is cut to the angle that I want. Theoretically, that's the 45. And then I can just take, and I can move this, and I can see where my angle is going to be. And once I get it set up where I want it, then all I have to do is I pencil a line in here, mark it here where it's going to start, and draw a line straight across here with a square. So that when I start the hole, then I can take the same thing and I can set it here, so that when I use my drill bit, it kind of gives me a guide to help me guide this to where I want it to be to go in the hole, so that I can then get it at the right angle, whatever that angle is going to be. This one turned out not to be the right angles on it. This is a 45, and this one was like a 12.5. I thought pocket hole angle would do it. And now I've determined that it's going to have to be a little more than that. So I've made a couple leather jigs where I just cut it off on the miter saw at the angle, and I tried it. I actually have found the easiest way to do this is just take my drill bit. If I want it to come out the other side, I would set this where I want it, and then I adjust my angle so that there it comes out, and that's what I'm going to want. And I want this drill bit to be as close to the inside of the joint as I can get it, like right here. And then I mark it here, and that's where I draw my line across, so I know my starting hole. Then I use the guide to hold my angle so that I can drill this through and come out the other side, and then that will allow them all to come out on my line over here. So if you mark it out, you should be able to hit your line on both of these with a simple little guide of some kind. I even went so far, and I don't know if I still have that here or not, that I actually, because it only took me 5 minutes to make, here's one, to make a guide. I just took a piece of scrap plywood and put an end on it so that I could hook it on the end. And then I measured where that hole has got to be. And I pre-drilled it for that angle. And now I can just use this as a guide to start my hole. And then when I get all the way in, if I need to go deeper, I can then move this away and finish drilling my holes with this so that I can drill it if I want to come out the other side all the way. So, and if you're doing a dead hole, it's the same thing. Took me a couple minutes to make this jig, and when I'm done, I can just throw it away. So I determine where I'm going to put my angle and everything on these on the fly, because quite honestly, two factors are involved here. One, you got your thickness of your wood is going to make a big difference. The angle on here and where you're going to be for this line and this line, if you're coming back, if you're coming out, is going to be determined by the thickness of your wood. So a 7/16 inch is going to be a slightly different angle probably than it is on here, especially if you're going to do a dead hole on it. I did do holes here on this piece. Is this the one? No. This is the one I did. Yep. So on this one, I've got, you can't hardly see them, but I got the dowel in here. There's another one right there, and the third one is right there. They're actually, if I put a square across here, they're all nice and even. But the angle on them is, it starts right here, just past the inside edge at the bottom, right there, and then this went up like this. and gave me a dead hole. That way I knew that when I went in all the way, I didn't come out over here at all. Now this one in particular, I was probably a little too far in because I did come out right here on the inside of the joint. You can see where the dowels kind of went through just slightly. But if you're careful, you can go over a little further and then that won't do that. But you got to make sure your angle is such that you don't come out the other end if you can help it, if you're going to do a dead hole. If you're going to do through holes, it makes it that much easier. And what I did was, this is just a simple square. That's a 22.5 degrees. You can do this with a piece of plywood. And I marked a line for the length of my drill bit so that now I know that this is what I'm kind of looking for. So if I take this piece, for example now, and I set this here and set this against my piece here, there's my inside corner. And if I bring this up and move this back and forth till I'm just inside that corner, like so, this tells me that if I'm going to do a dead hole, the hole is going to stop right about here somewhere in the center. If I move it over a little further, I'm still going to be that. If I want this thing to come out, then I have to either change my angle to a little bit more, probably closer to 30 degrees or 32 degrees, or I have to move this thing further to the outside edge of my joint. So to make this thing come out here, if I slide this back this far on 3/4 inch plywood, then what you have is, here's my point, and if I bring this over to where it's just at the edge of the outside edge of the plywood here, then that tells me this is my starting point. So I would take my pencil and I mark it right there, and I mark it right here, and then I take a square and draw my lines of where I wanted to go in and where I wanted to come out. Then when I drill my hole, it comes out right here, if you can see that, and it started right here. So that made that one, these now come out just exactly where I want, using this as my guide when I got ready to cut my holes. So I use this as a guide. I also use it to set up where my starting hole would be. I would recommend that you don't try to go in from this side because that's too steep of an angle for your drill bit, and it's really hard to get the starter hole to be exactly where you want it going in this way. Here it's not so steep on the angle coming out, so make this your entry point is on your bottom board, not on your side board, so that it's easier to drill these holes than using a template of some kind. And I can hold that template there and take my drill bit and my drill, and I can drill these holes out very easily and use this as a guide while I do it. So I can pretty much hit the angle 100% of the time. So that really helps, is to have some kind of setup. Figure out what angle you're going to want and create something like this, and you can do it. And like I said, instead of using this, you could just take that angle and scribe it to here, make this the right length so that it just hooks over the end, and then drilling that hole gets even easier. But because the thickness of this changes sometimes what your angle is going to be or where the start of the hole is, I wouldn't make just one that uses for everything because it just doesn't work that way. So I make these on the fly as I go along most of the time, or I just use this right here. And this really is an easy way to set it up. And I've also found that dead holes really work well on this. So anyway, these are kind of some of the tips that I learned. Always make sure when you buy your skewers, measure 2 or 3 of them so you know what diameter they are, and make sure you mark that so that anytime you use those skewers, you can grab the right drill bit. Make sure the length of your drill bit that you're going to use is consistent so that if you want to do holes that come out, that your starting point and your angle are going to be real critical so that the outside here, where it comes out, will be straight across instead of being staggered. And it just makes it look aesthetically better. Doesn't affect the strength. So, and like I said, you could take and actually move it over further or move the angle more steep to make it a dead hole if that's what you want to do. Just be careful, because these dowels, you only got one shot of putting it in, and you only have a few seconds to get it all the way in, especially if you're using a dead hole. So make sure you're ready with a little hammer. You cut off so that when you go to put this dowel in here, and if it gets stuck trying to put it in and it's not going all the way through, you want to be ready to be able to take a hammer real quick and finish tapping it through before it sets up. So just be prepared and make sure your dowels are long enough to do this. So, oops. Anyway, that's the story about dowels. I think that's all the tricks that I kind of learned. Watch your angle. One thing, if you get down to below 7/16 of an inch, all bets are off. Honestly, I don't even worry about this thing lining up in the same way I did on something thicker. Because it's going to be very difficult, and trying to get the angle exactly right on very thin material, I just eyeball those. And if they don't come out great, I just live with it. Because most of the time, if I'm doing something like this, you could set up an angle jig, make one that's very carefully, it'd be very time consuming, so that you can do that with these. But most of the time, I don't find that it's really that critical if you're doing a butt joint on something that's, this is 1/8 inch material, I think. So all the way down to, 1/8 of an inch hardboard. So all the way down to 1/8 of an inch, you can put dowels in here. This is one I showed you when I first was doing skewers. And this thing is still not breaking apart. It's amazing. So I've abused it all the time, and it does a good job. That's it in a nutshell. These are the little tricks that I learned. You want to be careful. Watch out for dead. You can do a dead hole. Just be prepared. Make sure you have something close at hand to finish driving it home if you need to. And make sure you get plenty of glue already set up, either in the hole or on the skewer itself. If I've got a through hole, I do not put any glue on this. I only put glue in the hole and let it squeeze out the other end. So when I put this in, it's picking up that glue as it goes all the way through. On a dead hole, squirt just a tiny bit of glue in there. Just enough that the end of the dowel will push it to the bottom of the hole, so that you have glue, plenty of glue around the bottom. And then put a lot of glue on the outside edge. Make sure what your depth is for the dead hole. So when you put it in, you know when you hit the bottom of that hole. For sure. So I think that's about it. It's not hard. You do have to pay attention. But this is why you can put and strengthen your dowels a lot by using the bamboo dowel. And you can do it with butt joints. You can do it with miter joints. And you can strengthen up a lot, even finger joints, with your bamboo skewers, your bamboo dowels. Give it a try. And once you start doing this, you'll have to pick up the method yourself. Like I said, I've done a bunch of these now and made some boxes and looked at how they come out and where I was going wrong and where it was giving me troubles. And I think these hints will help you to do it easier and easier. But it will take a little practice. And once you get it comfortable with it, it'll be nothing for you to grab some bamboo dowels and strengthen any joint out there pretty quickly and easily and without any real hassle. And actually, you won't hardly see these things either once they're in there. Like I said, I did this one, and boy, this is a maple, a hard maple, and it is really hard to even see those dowels. So give them a try. They are a great addition to any shop. Bamboo dowels. If you have any questions here, any comments, any observations, any suggestions, they're always appreciated, not only by me, but by my other viewers. Let me know. Just leave it in the comments. If you were interested in either of those Incra jigs and you want to get it, if I end up with them and you want one, let me know. I'll be more than happy to sell it to you for what it cost me. I'm just not going to let those go to just anybody. They're just too cheap. So I'm going to go ahead and buy them, even though I don't need them. But that way, you can save on them too if you want. So, if you like this video or you learned something here, and I'm sorry this video is so long, there was a lot here. But hit that like button. It lets me know I'm doing the right thing. If you dislike this video, you can still hit that like button. It at least lets me know that I'm doing something right. So, and for that one fella that keeps hitting the dislike, leave me a comment. Let me know why. It would help. Anyway, I do want to thank you for coming by. I do hope you like this video. But remember, I'm nowhere near done, so please come back again. Thanks. And we'll see you again very soon.